Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. This is Vishakha Bhave. I'm the VP of Product Innovation at Exact, and I extend a warm welcome to all of you for this webinar, which is Prism by Module Part 10, Curriculum Mapping and Management. Joining with me to host this webinar today is Chandni Parekh. She will be co-presenting a portion of the webinar with me, and we are also helped by Viral, who is also from Exact, and she will also help us monitor the questions in the chat box. Viral or Chandni, if you could confirm once that you are able to hear me.
Yes, Vishak, I'm able to hear you.
Okay, great. So a couple of housekeeping announcements before we get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let me know once you are able to see my screen.
We can see your screen, Vishak.
You're able to see, great. All right, so we are going to mute all of you for this webinar. If you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the question and answer section of this GoToMeetings, and we will keep monitoring them. We plan to take regular breaks in our presentation to address any questions or comments that have come up in that section. We do have a mix of audience today from different disciplines: PT, OT, PA, nursing, and so forth. So what we'll try to do is we have put in some examples of reporting or data that we'll be showing you. All of it is mock data. And we'll try to pick up examples from all these disciplines. So it'll be a mix in the presentation. And we will also be using a combination of PowerPoint slides and take you on the live system and show you some screens wherever relevant. We have attached the PowerPoint slides, the slide deck in a PDF format to the GoToWebinar session. So feel free to download that and follow along if you prefer it that way. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start with today's presentation. And Chandni, if you could confirm if you can see a full screen
Yes,
slideshow
Vishak.
format. Yeah, all right. Thank you for confirming. So let's begin. This is the overview of today's presentation. I'll start by talking about the curriculum mapping process in general and tell you about the overall capabilities of our curriculum mapping functionalities that we've built in Exact Prism. We will also talk about what are the different setups or configurations that you need to do in order for all your stakeholders to participate in the curriculum mapping project. And depending on your needs in terms of curriculum mapping, what mapping setup is required. So we'll discuss a little bit about that, followed by the third section of this presentation, which will be driven by Chandni, which is how to build your course components and how to map those course components to different standards. And then I'll present the part 4 of this, which is again discussing the reports or reporting capabilities that we have based on the curriculum mapping work that you have entered into the system, followed by the last part where I'll be talking about your faculty who are participating in the curriculum mapping. We do have different access levels built in, role-based access, and we'll talk a little bit about how that helps you give the appropriate privileges for mapping to your broader group that participates in this curriculum mapping. So we'll look at it from administrator side as well as faculty side. So to begin with, when you as an administrator log into the system, you're going to see this kind of a landing dashboard. Now, in Prism, we offer three different experiences to our users, right? You either have an administrator access or access to the main module, which looks something like this. We also offer a faculty module access, which is a limited access based on your course associations and student associations. And the third is the student experience. So today we are not going to talk about the student experience because they are not involved in curriculum mapping. So we'll be focusing on predominantly on the administrator module access, how to set up your curriculum mapping and how to go about doing the mapping and accessing the reports. And in the last few slides, I'll talk about for any of the users who have the faculty module experience or they access our Prism product via faculty logins, how can they experience and contribute to the curriculum mapping process? So that will be kind of the flow of today's presentation. So right when you log in, you will land up here, and the middle section here is what we are going to focus on, which is how to build your courses and make them ready for the curriculum mapping process, and then how to access the reports. The first section, which is the program section, we will show you how you can access your standards and view your standards that will be used for mapping. And the right-hand side section, which is placement management, we've already covered that in our previous webinars of the series, and we will not be focusing on that section today. So the whole goal of this whole curriculum mapping activity is that on one side you have all your standards, and you should be able to define which standards are important for you from curriculum mapping perspective. So they could be your accreditation standards, they could be your professional standards, which are nationally published, for example, competencies, or they could be programmatic standards that you come up with because they are important for you to track for managing your program, right? So it could be your student learning outcomes, your metrics of success, your programmatic objectives, missions, goals that you want to track and map to your curriculum. On the right hand side, you have your curriculum. So you want to design a good curriculum that will help you cater to your accreditation needs as well as your programmatic needs. So for that, you want to create your courses. You want to even define that, oh, each course in our curriculum should have these 5 things in it. Maybe it's course objectives, lecture objectives, goals, outcomes, depends on you, depends on your needs, right? But you should be able to define what constitutes your course content. And then you also need to be able to logically group your course offerings to offer a curriculum. You should be able to say that our class of 2023 is going to take these 20 or 30 courses. So that's what we're calling a curriculum that you're offering. And that curriculum could be based in a cohort, so maybe class of 2025 or 2026, or it could be based in an academic year, that this is our curriculum that we're offering for academic year 2023-2024. So our system will allow you to create those views as per your needs. Once you have the left-hand side and the right-hand side figured out, which is the standards and the curriculum, you want to make meaningful associations between those. You want to be able to link components of your courses to the standards that they help you meet. So you want to create those links between your curriculum components and your standards. Once you do that, our system will be able to generate a wide variety of reports from that exercise. So these reports can be very granular and they can be bird's eye reports as well. The reports can help you write self-study narratives, or the reports can help you take transactional action items and follow up on the mapping process with individual members who are responsible for it. So you could utilize the reports for driving your in-house curricular enhancements, or you could use them as appendices for your accreditation self-study report. So you could use the reports in whichever way you want to. So let's start by discussing a little bit about what are the overarching capabilities that the Prism curriculum mapping tool offers to its users. We have a team of customer support specialists, and here Chandni and Viral are our customer support specialists who know the ins and outs of the capabilities and the functionality of our curriculum mapping tool. Um, and when they are talking to you, when they are onboarding you, they discuss with you what are your curriculum mapping goals, what kind of reporting do you need, and based on that, they do recommend a mapping setup that will help you achieve those goals. So depending on your needs, depending on whether you are a new program that's in a candidacy status in their accreditation, or you are an established programs and you have years of accreditation under your belt, your mapping needs might be different, right? You could have a need where you want very high level reports, bird's eye reports, where you're saying, oh, we want to map our entire courses to the standards. Like we have 30 courses that we offer in our curriculum, and we just want to see course 1, 3, and 5 help us meet the standards. So this is a very high level bird's eye view of mapping that you might need. Our system can support that. You may say that for some standards, we actually want to do a click down, and just mapping which courses map help us meet the standard is not enough. Inside of a course, we want to know which course objective or which course goal or which course outcome helps us meet a particular standard or a child standard. Our system can help you do that as well. Then there might be some programs that may say that, we want to do one more level of click down. We want to be able to tell our accreditation council or include a report that allows us to not only map a particular course objective to a standard, but even mention that we have 14 lectures in this course and how lecture number 1 is linked to a particular course objective, which in turn helps us meet a particular standard. So you want that additional link that you want to showcase, where your events or your lecture topics are even included in the mapping. Our system is able to support that as well. Or you might be a program that wants to go even further down at a more granular level and say that not only we want to be able to showcase which objective meets with which standard, but we want to able to add more color to it, and we want a report that tells me whether that objective is covering a content which is knowledge based, skill based, or behavior based, and whether it is being taught at a beginner level, intermediate level, or advanced level. And our system will even support this level of granularity. So it's a highly flexible tool. Depending on your needs, we can customize the mapping setup, which will be able to give you those kind of granular reports or bird's eye reports. Now, I'm using course objective as an example here, but you might very well substitute it with course goals, course outcomes. You get to pick what should be the course measures. So the course measures term that I'll be using throughout this talk is a generic term, and that could be course objectives, it could be course goals, it could be course outcomes, it could be lecture objective, instructional objectives. We do understand that different programs use different terminology, and they may use one or more measures for the mapping process, so that flexibility and customization is built in. All right, so now that we got a brief overview of what are the capabilities of our product, I'm going to talk a little bit about the building blocks, right? What do you need to have in place before the actual mapping activity can start? So we'll start with our standards. So you definitely want to build out all your standards, and you want to make sure that all the standards that matter to you in terms of your curriculum mapping process and accreditation are all in there in the system. Now, when we onboard you and when we set you up and when we give you access to the Prism system, we automatically populate the accreditation and professional standards for you. So if you are a PA program, you will see that the ARC PA standard is already pre-populated for you. If you are a PT program, CAPT will be there, or if you're an OT program, ACOT. If you're nursing, essentials will be populated for you, right? So these come pre-populated because we already have these published by the accreditation councils. They are already available, so you don't have to put in the effort to build these into the system. We do give you the capability of modifying them, editing them, changing their order in case you need to do that. Now, for accreditation standards, we wouldn't want to mess with them, right? We just want to map them as they are. But if they are program specific standards, which is the second bullet right here, those are highly specific to each program. Those could be your program defined standards, and most programs like to go over and beyond their accreditation and professional standards, right? For example, you want to define your student learning outcomes for your entire program, or the programmatic goals, metrics of success, and you do want to track how your curriculum is helping you meet some of these programmatic standards. So these are completely customizable. You populate these. You can either give it to us and our support team can help populate, or you can directly go into the system and do it yourself. The way we have designed our system, and I'll show you these screens by going to the live system, they're very intuitive, very user friendly. You can directly go into the system and start populating these. So this is where designing your curriculum comes into picture, right? So you do want to build your standards and then you want to design your curriculum. When you go to the curriculum, you want to create your courses, yeah, right? Your base 25 or 30 courses that you use in your program. You want to create the course offerings, which happen every academic year, right? Based off that base course. And then you want to decide, what do I want for all my courses? What course components do I want? You can say, I just want course objectives, or you can say, I want course objectives and course goals. Again, I'll show you how these categories can be predefined by you. And once you define them as an administrator, all your courses will start showing those categories. And then the respective faculty who are in charge of this course can add in the content under those categories. So after you have decided on your standards and your courses, the next item is attributes. Now, what are attributes? Attribute is a highly customizable and flexible tool that we offer as part of our Prism product. Think about them as labels that help you answer the how, what, where, and when in your curriculum mapping exercise, right? So the basics of curriculum mapping are, linking a course objective or a course to a particular standard. But that's not enough for writing your self-study narrative, for getting that click down information that you need in order to make those curricular enhancements or to identify those gaps and redundancies. That's why we have created this tool which will allow you to track those aspects in your curriculum and get the views and the reports that will help you write those narratives. So examples are, if you want to track all the teaching tools that you're using across your curriculum, or all the assessment methods, or if you want to see how is lifespan covered across your curriculum, which courses cover it, what categories of lifespan are covered, an attribute will help you achieve that. Or whether you're using, what kind of instructional methods are you using, right? Maybe you're using case studies, small groups, problem-based learning, seminars, all those different formats that help your students excel in that communication and skill in the curriculum. Or you may want to track learning progression, that how are the students progressing in the curriculum from the first course to the last course that they take in terms of beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So all those things the attribute tool helps you achieve. So we are going to showcase some sample attribute reports, which will help you grasp this concept even better. All right, so this is a overview, and now the next sections are going to be actually to show you in the system how each of these things can be set up and done. But before I move on, I want to take a pause, a break, and see if there are any questions or comments that we can address at this point.
No questions, Vishaka.
Okay, all right. So then in the interest of time, I'll keep moving. The next section is curriculum and mapping setup. So this section, as an administrator, before your wider group of users can start with the actual mapping activity, what are the things that need to be set up and that need to be in place, right? So let's start with standards. So when you log into the system, and I'm actually going to take you to the live system here. So I'm going to switch my screen and take you to the live system. So if you are an administrator and if you log in to the system, this is a demo stub. This is all dummy data. I'm going to log in to a PT discipline demo data. But imagine the functionality doesn't change. So the verbiage will change, the standard names will change, the course names will change, but the functionality remains the same. So if you belong to another discipline, just imagine your standards in place of CAPT standards right now. So you land into a dashboard like this. This is the administrator experience. So I'm logged in as an administrator of the program, and I have access to the main module or the administrator module. I'll land up on this screen and I'll click on program details. This is where the standards are located. So when I click on the standards, you will see all, because I'm logged in as a physical therapy discipline, I'm seeing CAPT standards here. NPTE is the National Board Licensure Examination Blueprint content. So that's what you see here. So all these are published, they are accreditation standard or nationally published standard. So exact will pre-populate them for you. So you don't actually have to go to each one of them and type it in, right? It's already there. You can, however, once you're onboarded, if you want to change the order for some reason, or you want to change the verbiage, typically users will not do that for accreditation standards, but if you feel the need, you can always do that. You click on add standard, you add the standard code, the descriptions, any notes that you want to make, and you can save it. You can even, you see these 6 bullets that indicates that you can drag and drop, so you can change the order of these standards if you want to. The caret sign that you see here allows you to expand and collapse, right? So you can expand and collapse each of these standards. The plus sign allows you to add a child standard under 7B professional curriculums. If you wanted to add a child standard under that, you would use this plus sign. If you wanted to add a parent standard, you would use this plus add standard sign. So that's how it works, and it works exactly the same way for all the standards. On the top here, you see the standard name, and you see a pencil icon. Wherever you see a pencil icon, you're able to edit it. So if I click on it, if you wanted to modify the name of the standard, you could. We do have the functionality to activate the standard, and what this bit does is to the rest of the users in your program who do not have administrator access. Maybe they have limited access. Maybe they are accessing this via faculty module. Unless you activate this standard will not show up in all the courses for mapping purpose. So if, for example, if you had a standard that was for reference only, you just wanted to refer to it, maybe you have your mission and vision or your programmatic goals, you don't want to include that in your curriculum mapping, but you want it as a reference, then you would add it over here under program specific standards, but you wouldn't activate. So that's why that activate functionality is there. If whatever is activated becomes available for mapping when you enter a course for mapping. That's the logic. So you do see accreditation and professional standards, which are pre-populated. And then you see a section on programmatic standards, program specific standards. And because they're highly specific, you would upload these, you would build these, right? We wouldn't pre-populate anything for you. So you would click on this plus icon, you would give it a name, maybe you can say metrics of success, and you would save it. And then let's take example of student learning outcomes. There are already 4 standards. If you wanted to add another student learning outcome, you could click on the plus sign, add it. If you had any reference document that you wanted to add for a particular standard for all the stakeholders to see, you would add that here, and that's it. So if you wanted to export a list of your standards, you would use this export button, and it would export the list of all the standards for you. So that is what I wanted to cover for building your standards. So for accreditation standards, they come pre-populated, you review them. If everything looks good, you activate them and you're done. If you have program specific standards, you will have to add them here using this functionality. All right, so let me go back to my PowerPoint. So we discussed all these points on this slide. Then we go on to our second building block, which is designing your courses and setting up the course objectives and the course measures, right? So again, I'll go to the live system. The experience is better when I show it to you on the live system. So when I click on the hamburger menu, these 3 dashes on the top left corner, that's what we call the hamburger menu. You can go on courses tab, and you will see 4 tabs under courses: setup, course catalog, course offering, and curriculum grid. If I click on the setup, this is where I'm going to define my curriculum design. This is where you get to pick, okay, for all my courses that I'm offering in my curriculum, I want the following course measures to be part of each course offering. I want course objectives, I want course outcomes, I want lecture objectives. So you can add a course measure from here, a new category from here, right? And you can even check mark if you want it to be active or not. And the reason we have given this functionality is because maybe until 2022 you were using course objectives, and from 2023 onwards you only want all your future courses to have lecture objectives and not course objectives. So then you can just deactivate it. So if you already have data from the past, that data will stay, but for all the future courses you will not see course objectives, you'll see uh, lecture objectives. So that flexibility is provided for that. Of course, here you're seeing a laundry list of all the different examples of course measures that a program could have. Realistically, a program never has so many course measures. They would either go with course objectives, lecture objectives, instructional objectives, or course goals or outcomes, right? Or maybe sometimes they'll have 2 or 3, but not so many. But this is because we are demoing it to you. We're giving you all the different samples and examples that we've seen. Of course, each one of this is editable and deletable. So if you do not want to use them in the future, you can always go ahead and delete those. So this is how you set up. Now, whatever you have set up here, all your courses in the curriculum are going to start reflecting these categories. And when Chandni presents how you can build or enter objectives under each of these categories, you'll see how these categories show up under each course. Once you have decided what are the different course measures that you want each of your courses to have, the next setup is attributes. And you could either have attributes, you could assign attributes at different levels, right? You could say, I want to assign attributes for the entire course. I want to assign attributes for course measures, and I want to assign attributes at a very granular level, at lecture level or event level. So you're able to do all of that. It just depends on what kind of reporting do you want. Depending on that, you would have to put in the effort, right? The more granular you want to do the mapping setup, the more work your mapping team will have to do. That's the only difference. So again, I can click on the plus icon and I can say that this is a new attribute that I want to cover, right? And here are some examples of attributes: instructional methods, lifespan, Bloom's taxonomy. It really depends on you. You could have you could have assessment methods, teaching technology tools like you use iClickers or online games or poll during your lectures, uh, anything that you want to track which helps you either drive your curriculum enhancements or write self-study narratives, you can build as attribute categories over here. When you click on a new attribute category, it'll ask you whether you want to activate it or not. It'll ask you whether you want to collect this attribute at a course level, at a course measure level, or at an event level. With each of these selection, you're being more granular. So the choice is yours. Once you make those selections, you can also decide if you want to collect attributes at a very granular level. This we also call as our multi-level report, where you can say that for every mapping, I want to be able to collect whether the objective that is being taught or the content that is being taught in a course, whether the content is knowledge based, skill based, or behavior based, right? Let me scroll down so you can see. For example, if it's a lab course where you're teaching the students how to draw blood or measure the blood pressure, it's a skill based course. If it's didactic course, it could be a knowledge based course. Some courses may have both skills and knowledge built into it. Or if it's a professional ethics or a communications course, you may want to collect it under behavior. And for each of them, if you want to even further define whether it's being taught at a beginner level, intermediate level, or advanced level, you're able to do that. Now, if you notice, each one of these has the pencil icon. So if you don't use the advanced label, and say if you use master as label instead of advanced, you could easily save that. So the labels and the terminology are completely customizable. Some folks like to use the term novice instead of beginner, right? So they can change this. So these are customizable labels. Depending on the terminology that you use in your program, you can change these. So this is the collecting attributes at the mapping level to show student progression of learning. And I'll show you a sample of how that report will pan out if you do go ahead and collect these attributes. All right. So once you are done with this curriculum design kind of setup, the next is to create your courses. And in our previous webinars in this series, we've already multiple times walked you over how you can create courses in the system. But basically, you have a course catalog, which is your base courses. Then you have course offerings, which is basically the base courses being offered in a particular term and academic year. That's what constitutes your course offering. And then based on the course offering, you can go ahead and create a curriculum grid. What is a curriculum grid? It's basically logical grouping of your courses so that you get a nice visual as to what your students have to go through, all the courses that they have to go through to be able to graduate from the program. So for example, it's going to look something like this, right? So I can briefly show you how you can create this view once all your course offerings have been created. You click on edit curriculum. This is already created. So if this was not created, you would have a plus sign here and you could start afresh. But I'll show you. If you click on edit curriculum, it'll first ask you, okay, what are your filter options that you want to see? You click on that and you click on next. You can pick all the course offerings that you want to include in this curriculum or in this view. So you can go ahead and search courses either based on academic year, professional year, term, or a cohort, and you'll get a list of courses. You can go ahead and select all the courses that make sense to you that you want to include in this curriculum. You click on next and you will get a preview of what the selected courses would look like. They will be nicely arranged based on the academic year in which they are being offered or the term in which they are being offered, how many credit hours are there. You can even see which courses are clinical versus didactic. Those courses that require a placement will be marked with a P. All the courses that do not have that P label are all didactic courses. You click on next. it brings you to the mapping setup. This is where the curriculum mapping setup happens. So for all the courses in this curriculum, you would want to map them to certain standards, right? So that's what you're going to select next. For all the courses in this curriculum, what are some of the standards that you want to map to? What are the attributes that you want to collect for these? And at what level do you want to collect it? How granular do you want your mapping activity and data to be? Do you want to collect it at a very high level or at a granular level? So let's go through this one by one. So the first in the mapping setup is select course measures. So if I expand this here, it's asking you about which attributes do you want to collect for each of your course measures. And here you can see that for course objectives, you want to collect the assessment methods, the instructional methods, Bloom's taxonomy, categories. You for your instructional objectives, you want to collect the attribute of lifespan. So which lifespan categories are being covered via the instructional objectives? Maybe it's infant or geriatric or adult or youth, right? So we have already defined what are going to be the categories under lifespan from the central setup for attributes. Here what you are doing is you're saying that either I want to collect course objectives for all my courses in this curriculum by activating it, and then if you're activating it, what are the different attributes that you do want to collect for course objectives, right? Then once you make a decision around that, the second is selecting your standards, right? What is the mapping chain that you want to build? For example, you may say that here I want to map my entire courses to program goals. So I don't want to go granular. I want to say out of my 25 courses, course number 1, 3, and 5 helps me achieve program goals. Which goals do they help you meet? So it's a very high level report that you'll get out of this mapping chain. Whereas for the next one, course objectives, you can say, I want to map it to NPTE content, this particular standard. And I not only I want to map that, I also want to collect the content category and at what level. So knowledge, skill, and behavior. I want to collect all that information. Or the last one here, where I want to map the course objectives to the CAP accreditation standards, and I also want to collect details about it. So once you, and our team will help you with this. So if you tell our team when they're onboarding you that I want to get this kind of granular reports, then they'll recommend that, okay, based on your needs, go with this mapping setup. So they'll make a recommendation to you. So this is, you're not all by yourself. Our team will help you envision what kind of mapping setup will help you achieve your goals. Okay, so once you have decided on your standards, then you select the attributes. So this is if you want to collect attributes at a very high level. For example, if you want to collect the attribute of interprofessional education and which out of 30 courses, which courses do cover interprofessional education. So very high level collection of attribute can happen from here. Or if you want to go very granular, right? Then you may say that I actually want to collect attributes at event level. For each lecture that I'm teaching, I want to be able to assign an attribute. You can even do that. So again, depending on your needs, you can go with the mapping setup. Just keep in mind that the more granular you go, the more work you will have to do in terms of collecting all that data. That's the only thing to keep in mind. Our system will allow you to cover the entire spectrum, high level, medium, very granular. It's very flexible and customizable. So that's in short the mapping setup. Once the mapping setup is done, whatever you have set up here is going to start reflecting in each of the courses when that particular faculty or user goes into that course for the purpose of mapping. All right, so let me go back to my presentation and see if I have covered all the points. For attributes, we did cover what it helps you do, right? So here I have shown you an example of how attributes will help you cover the important or track the important aspects of your curriculum. And in parenthesis, you will see that which standard does it help you cover if you create those attribute buckets. What you're seeing here is some best practices that we have learned by working with all the health programs across different domains. And by looking at their accreditation standards, we do have a started list of attributes that we think will help you. But of course, these are customizable. So we'll get you started. We'll share these attribute list to get you started, and then you can change them, modify them, revise them, right? So we'll share the best practices with you, but ultimately you can design your own attribute buckets. For example, here you can see that both the ACOT standards as well as the ARC-PS standards, there is a standard that asks them to discuss how lifespan is covered in the entire curriculum. So creating an attribute of lifespan and defining your lifespan categories like infants, adult, uh, elderly, and then tracking them and marking which lecture objective or which instructional objective in which course is covering which lifespan. Imagine a report like that in front of your eyes when you're writing that self-study narrative, right? So that's why we have designed these attributes. I'll show you some samples in upcoming slides, but basically that's what attributes is about. We already covered how you can set up, you can create courses, course offerings, how can you create a curriculum grid. We just covered that. We covered how you can um, create a mapping setup, define your standards. So we covered that part. We covered the setup part, both with respect to courses and with respect to your standards and mapping. So let me pause here before we go on to the next section, which is basically how to actually build your course objectives and how to map it to standards. So that portion Chandni will take up. So she will start sharing her screen. But before that, we'll just pause and see if there are any questions that we can address.
So, Vishaka, there is one question. It says, can I get the best practices of course attributes for PTA program?
For PTA,
Yeah.
sure. So PTA is very similar to PT, but with some differences. There are some differences in standards and what they are required to um, comply with. We would definitely have to dig from our database to see what our PTA schools are doing. But if you wanted to drop an email to Chandni, we will work with you and try to give you whatever we know about the PTA domain. So we can definitely work with you on that.
Another question we have is, assessment is in both standards and attributes. Can you address the distinction?
Okay, so the question is assessment methods can be a standard in itself. Obviously, all accreditation self-study have assessment as one of the standards where you want to address how assessments are being designed in your curriculum and how are you assessing your students. So, and how is that different from creating it as an attribute, right? That's a great question. It really depends on how you want to utilize our system. If you are tracking assessment standard in your standards list. So let me quickly go to the actual system. If I go to the standards section here, typically we are showing the curriculum related standards here, right? But if you wanted to track, if you wanted to include your assessment standard here and map your curriculum directly to your assessment standard and child standards of assessment, you can go that way. Or if you just want to work with your curriculum design and curriculum content standards here, then we would recommend you create assessment tools as one of the attributes and get a report based on that. Also, the reporting format will be different. If you map to an assessment standard. So if you include assessment as one of the standards here and map all your courses to that assessment standard, then you can get a standard based report. So the reporting format will be a standard based report where assessment standard will be mapped to multiple courses and you could have the details there. But if you create it as an attribute, you will get an attribute based report. So it really depends on which way you want to go with. And in case you wanted to track assessment as a standard, then I would just upload it as a standard over here and go about it. In the upcoming slides, I will show you two formats, a standard based report and a attribute based report. After you look at those formats, you should see what advantages each format provides you with and which format will be easier for you to write a self-study narrative. And depending on that, you can choose if you want to create a assessment standard and then map your courses to it, or create it as an attribute. Most of our programs have created it as an attribute assessment methods, and then they just say that we have midterms and finals and all of those assessment methods. It will not allow you to view it as a standard. Then it will allow you to view as an attribute report. I hope that answers your question. Maybe when I show you both those reporting formats, you'll get a better idea as to which way you want to go.
Thank you, Vishaka. I think there's one more question as well. Where do we place lifespan as an objective attribute?
So you would go here. So you would go to the, if you wanted to create lifespan as an attribute, you would click on courses, you would go to setup, you see this attribute setup, you would go here and you would go, depending on which level you want to track this attribute. If you wanted to track it, so there's currently we have built lifespan as an attribute. So I'm going to click on edit. And it'll say, do you want to collect lifespan at an entire course level, at course measure level, or at event level, right? So if I say course measure level, then it'll ask me, do you want to track it for course objectives, course goals, like all your course measures, or selected courses? So you can even pick that. So this is where you would actually go and create that objective. Now, if you did not, right now I already have that, but if you imagine it's not there, then you click the plus sign here and create it. So you would say, give the category name as lifespan. I'm not going to save this because I already have it, and then define which level and go about that way.
Thank you. And then I think one more question popped up. If you can just show them how the generate syllabus feature looks.
Sure. On my end, your audio is breaking. However, it might be at my end. So if any of the audience could confirm if the audio from Chandni and Viral is breaking, or is it good for them, we can keep moving. If you could just put it in the question section or the chat section, if anyone of you could confirm if the audio is good for all of you, or is it breaking? It is fine. Okay. Audio is fine. Okay, good. That's good.
And
It's just at my end then.
And Vishaka, I am sharing my screen. I'm showing the generated syllabus. You can guide me as needed.
Sure. Chandni, are you able to take control and share your screen?
Yes. Can you see the generated syllabus that I'm sharing?
Yes, I'm able to see it, Jen.
All right. So yes, this is what the generated syllabus looks like. It will populate all of the information, all of the details into a Word document, which can be updated. You can make tweaks to it as needed. And since it's in a Word format, it's very easy for you to add more information to this as needed.
Perfect. Thank you. And then we have another question. Sorry, going back to attributes. The question is, they've built some attributes and they know how to nest them as child attributes, but once those are created, can you go back and create a parent, or can you only build more child attributes?
So let me see if I'm getting the question right. Once you create a child attribute, can you go back and change the parent attribute? Is that the question?
I think it just says, can you go back and create a parent, or can you only build more child to the attributes?
Oh, so if you had 5 parent attributes and you started creating the child attributes for those 5 parent attributes, but then you wanted to go and add a 6th attribute um, in the setup so that it starts showing in all the courses, I think you should be able to add it back. But Chandni, can you confirm that if that's possible? I think it is possible.
Yes, Vishaka. I mean, if the parents are added and we have child nested underneath it, we can just change the label of the parent and we can create new set of attributes. But adding more parents to it would be a little tricky. So our team can help work on that.
Okay. Any other questions?
I think that should cover every question. Oh, sorry, I missed one. I think someone is asking, they don't see a setup tab under courses on their side. Could that be a
So if they are not seeing setup under courses, we would want to know what kind of access they have, because it's possible that they have faculty access. And I'm going to talk about it at the end of this webinar, but faculty will not be able to change the mapping setup. They will only be able to do the mapping for their courses that they are associated with. So I don't know if the individual who's asking this question have a faculty module access or an administrator module access, but it might be because of that difference.
Okay. Thank you, Vishaka. I think that should cover all of it.
Okay, so then passing on to you, Chandni, we can see you're already sharing your screen, so please go ahead and continue with the next section.
Thank you, Vishaka. So I'm going to walk you through the building and mapping the course components into the system. So I'll be going into the live system and taking you through this entire process. Now, when you log in into the system, when you're on your curriculum grid page, this is where you'll have list of all of your courses. Now, as an administrative or as a faculty role, whoever is working on the project on updating the courses, managing their courses, they can go and log in into the system and pick the courses that they are responsible for. So for example, if I'm a faculty and I'm responsible for this one course, I can click on it and I'll find all the information related to this course in the screen here. I can update the basic information about the course, but my primary focus would be making sure the components, the measures have been built out in each course and I can map them to particular standard. So what we see over here is on the left hand side, we have a section that is measures. This is where all of the components that under the setup screen we set up the course objectives, the instructional objectives, lecture objectives, those different categories would show up by default into all of your courses. And now for each category, you would be able to click on it and you can expand it to see what has been populated as part of your course objective. If nothing has been populated, you will find this plus icon appearing next to those categories. You can add more objectives to this list and make minor tweaks to it. So I can use the add course option to add more objectives here. I can type in the number of the objective I'm trying to add the description for it, and I can also say that when this objective is meeting a particular standard, or when this objective is exceeding a particular standard, or what are the objectives. So what are the different ways that the objective is going to be assessed? What are the different taxonomy associated to it, etc. So these are all additional layers of attributes that we can add when we are adding the objectives into the system. This is going to help you out when you're writing the narratives, because all this information is going to be available in the system. So this is how you can add more objectives into the system. For each objective, you'll be able to click on it, and you have a pencil icon that appears, which will allow you to make changes to it if needed. And if you at all, if you need to delete this particular objective, the delete option is actually hidden. So next to the save button, you will have three dots that appear vertically. And when you click on it, only then your delete option will be available. When you click on delete, it will ask you for a confirmation, after which you can delete the objective. Now, as a faculty, while I'm making tweaks to my objectives, I need second opinion on it. I need the curriculum committee or the program director to review the objective that I've added, just to ensure that it's correctly added. So that's why we have this feature known as tags. I can just add a tag to my objective. I can use the plus icon, and I can say that this objective needs to be reviewed. So I can add a tag to this objective, I can apply it, and automatically in the reports section, a report is generated that will show all the objectives that needs to be reviewed. So anyone who has administrative access, the program director, curriculum committee, they can go ahead and review all of this information via the reports, and they can come back and change it that it's confirmed and it's okay to go ahead. Right? So this is a great feature to use in the system for the faculty and the administrative to collaborate and coordinate in the system directly. Apart from that, you can also use this feature known as linking. So while you have your objectives components built in here, you also want to link them to different course events. It could be linked with different components such as instructional objectives or lecture objectives. So you see, for every objective, you have this chain-like symbol that appears. When you click on it, you will find all the different events and all the different instructional objectives appearing here. You can pick that this objective will be linked with which particular topic or lecture, or it will be associated and linked with this particular instructional objective. So what you're doing here is that you're creating a chain between different components of your courses, allowing you to showcase how an individual unit of instruction, be it a topic, a lecture, or even a objective, how it is helping you achieve the bigger course objective, which in turn is mapped to a particular standard. That's what you're doing by using the link-in feature in the system. When you click on save, it generates a nice Word report for you to go through and see how your objectives are linked to particular lectures or instructional objectives. And it also shows you, in addition to that, that this objective is mapped, if it's a PT domain, it's mapped to 7A anatomy, for example. So for each domain, you would have your set of standards and objectives added in, and you'll have the reports accordingly. Now you have your components built in here. You have linked them, you have added the tags. So next thing what you can do is, and I'll go back to my slide here, right? And I'll just do full screen. Perfect. Now, apart from adding the measures, you can also add the event schedule. If you wanted to house in or collect the different events or topics that are going to be taught in this course, you can add those information in the system directly, because what this will help you out with, this will help you when you're doing the linking of an objective to a topic. You can use that feature after adding the event schedule, and you can additionally house in these details here so that you're building your entire syllabi in the system itself. So we went over course events, and we also discussed how to link your events to your measures. Now let's talk about mapping them with certain standards. You have completed all the updates for all the objectives, the measures, and now you can begin the mapping process. So again, I'll go back into the live system. From the left-hand menu, when you click on mapping, it shows you a nice view of your entire grid. Now, whichever access you have, maybe you have a faculty role or an administrative role, you will see the same view at your end, and you can pick which course you're responsible for. So you select the course from this view here, and on the left hand side it gives you the details that this is the course you selected, when is it being offered, you see the details up top here, and you have two different options. Of course, based on how you have set up your system, how the mapping setup has been done, based on that only you'll be able to see the standards appearing on the right hand side. Now, some schools may decide that they want to map the course as a whole with a particular standard. That could be program goals, university goals, student learning outcomes. It could be any one of those standards. So if you decide you would like to map your course, just the course with a particular standard, and if we activate it into the system and configure it, then when you click on map entire course, you'll be able to see only that standard which you have configured. And you can further expand it and use the add mapping option to map your course with a particular standard. And then you can save it. But if you have activated and configured your standards to be mapped with particular objectives, you're doing a click down level, then for your objectives, when you click on course objectives over here, where each objective will show up, each one being clickable. So you can select each objective from the left hand side. And on the right hand side, it shows you the full description of the objective. It even shows you which standards are activated for this particular objective. You can expand each one of this to see what mappings have been completed already. If there are no mappings, you will find a plus icon at your end to be able to add mappings to it. So you can use the plus icon. Of course, the standards would show up in a particular format, and wherever you see the symbol, caret symbol, which we refer to as, just click on it to see the detail, the subchild of it. You do not want to by mistakenly select the main parent and map everything to your objective, which will result to overmapping of curriculum. So you can pick particular set of standards that are really applicable to this objective. You can click on save, and now your mapping is completed. While you're mapping, you also want to make it easier when you're writing the narrative. So you want to add some additional notes. You want to add additional layer of attributes. So for each mapping, you have a pencil icon that will appear. You can click on that pencil icon, and it will allow you to pick that when the subjective is mapped to 7A anatomy, at what learning level it is. When these concepts are being taught to the students, is it at the domain of knowledge, beginner learning level, or is it intermediate or advanced? You can pick the correct attribute here. This will only show up if you have configured and activated this in the mapping setup. Apart from this, you will always have this area to type in the notes. So you can add some notes to your mapping. You can upload evidence or artifact, any documents related to this mapping. And you can also, if as a faculty you're mapping this and you need a second opinion on your overall mapping, you can tag this mapping as this needs to be reviewed. And so reports can be generated to see that these are the mappings that needs review from the curriculum committee. All the notes that you're adding here, all of the attachments you're adding here, the attributes, all of it will be showing up in the reports. It does pull up on the report side. And of course, you can use the trash icon to delete any mappings that is incorrect, and you can continue mapping the rest of the objectives in the similar format. Now, as a whole team, you all have worked in the system for a particular cohort, let's say class of 2022. You have completed all of the mappings and the reports are looking good. Now you want to do the same activity for the upcoming class, which is class of 2023. Of course, it's too much of manual efforts to go in and do all of this all over again. So we have introduced this feature known as cloning. Next to each grid you're under action column, you're seeing this icon. This is the cloning symbol. If you click on it, what it will allow you to do is copy the entire class of 2022 with mappings, without mappings, that is completely up to you. You can decide that, but you can copy it into a class of 2023. And then further, you can use that created 2023 cohort, make tweaks to it, and you have your entire new cohort ready in the system in with less hard work. So the first step when you click on cloning is to name it. You can say class of 2023. You can add a description here if you would like to. You can assign the cohort 2023 to it. And it will also ask from your end which course offerings from 2022 will be you want to copy over to class of 2023. So up top here, it gives you an option to change the academic year because this has to be changed. If you do not change the academic year, you're using the existing offerings of 2022, which will result into duplication of the information. So you always want to update the academic year as per your cohort. You can pick which courses will be added to the next cohort. Maybe these two courses are no longer being offered into 2023. You can deselect them, and the rest you can continue with it and click on next. The final step over here would be to pick what information you want to copy over. The course details, prerequisites, events, course policies, the course objectives. Do you want to copy this information over as well? Maybe you do not want to copy the mappings because of a major curriculum haul. You'd want to revise all of the mappings. So you can leave the mappings out. Or maybe you want to leave the mappings, but you do not want to copy over the instructional objectives. So it's completely up to you how you set it up. And when you click on save, within 60 to 70 minutes, depending on the complexity of data you have, how much mappings you have selected, in a few hours, you will have another grid ready here in the system. It will show you with the yellow spinning circle that your grid is being copied over, and you can use the rest of the system while that is being taken place in the background. Let me go back to my slide here. So we went over the mapping process and we talked about how you can collaborate using tags at the mapping and objective level. We also went over the cloning process. And yeah, any questions? And I'll hand over to you, Vishaka. Vishaka will take all of you through the next section. So you can take over the screen, Vishaka.
Sure, sure. Let me start sharing my screen. And if you could confirm when you see my screen.
Sure, Vishaka.
Are you able to see it? Are you able to see my screen?
Not yet.
I'm not able to see it, yeah.
Okay, let me How about now?
Yes, visible.
Yeah? Okay, great. Do we have any questions that we need to address for the previous section? Let's see. There is one question from Renee. So if I have mapped a course to standard 7D elements, I went to map entire course, but it said that no standards were mapped. Can you please explain this again? So Renee, if the question is that if you went to your course, but you do not see, and you want to map it for the entire course, but if you do not see the standard on the right to map, what would you do? I would check the setup. Only if a mapping chain has been created where the administrator has set up that we do want to map our entire courses, not the course measure level, but the entire course to a particular standard, only then will you see that option on the screen. Does that answer your question? So it all depends on the mapping setup. So if you then did want to map a particular standard at course level, you would go back to your mapping setup and create that mapping chain setup. And then when you go back to the course, you would be able to see the standard appear by the entire course. You could go ahead and map it. I hope that answers your question. You can type in if it doesn't. If I do not change my curriculum course offerings, do I have to have curriculum names as different cohorts? Right now, it was migrated as Lone Star College PTA name. No. So if you're not changing your course offerings and you just want to do the mapping for a particular curriculum that you have created, and you're okay with that, you do not want to change the curriculum mapping for the next cohort, you can keep using the same curriculum mapping that you have. But if you do want to modify the mappings from the previous cohort's curriculum to the new cohort, then what I would recommend is do the cloning, create the new curriculum for the new cohort, say cohort of 2025, and then make any edits or small changes you want to make to the new cohort or to the new course offerings from there. So you still save a lot of effort because you've brought in all your mappings and you're just tweaking or changing for the new course offerings. And thanks for confirming. All right, so those were the questions that I saw. So I guess we'll keep continuing. And then Chandni, you can keep manning the question box for any more questions, but I'll go ahead and start with the next section.
Sure.
Okay, all right, moving on. So this is the reports part. So once you have put in all the effort, then comes the time to reap the benefits of all those efforts. I know it's a massive process, a lot of hard work goes into it, and sometimes the entire program, all the faculty and administrators are involved depending on how you manage your curriculum mapping. You could have a small group of folks doing it, one person doing it, or all the faculty involved in it for their own courses. So, but it is a lot of work. So once you've done all of that, you can go ahead and access all your mapping reports, right? And I'll switch to the live system. So I come back to the dashboard. On the dashboard, you'll see a mapping reports tab here. So I would click this section. If you are anywhere else in the system, you could click on the hamburger menu and it would also have the same navigation of mapping reports. So you can go ahead and click on that and it'll land you on this mapping summary or mapping dashboard. Now this dashboard is an overview of all the mapping data that you have so far for this particular curriculum. So the first thing is you pick the correct curriculum that you want to see the mapping data for. So right now I'm in class of 2022. So I'm going to see the mapping data associated with this curriculum. Mapping summary is the first landing tab, and it gives you an overarching bird's eye view of how much data is available to you post your mapping. So you get an overview of, oh, I have 4 standards that were mapped as part of curriculum mapping, and how many standards. So for CAPT standard, I have 82 out of my 124 standards mapped. So this 124 count is uh, all the child standards, including the child standards as well, right? So out of all the standards, 82 of them have some mapping associated with them. That's how I would interpret this first graph right here. On the right-hand side, it gives you an overview from a course perspective. So on the right-hand side, you can see how many courses out of the total courses have been mapped to a particular standard. So again, if we see CAPT standard, we'll see that 14 courses out of the 39 have some mapping for CAPT standard. So it gives you a view from the standards count perspective and from a course count perspective. If we come to the second row, if I scroll down, this is where all your attribute usage reports are, all those attributes that you collected data on, like what assessment methods am I using? How am I covering lifespan? What are the instructional methods? All those can be gotten from here. And these are actually clickable graphs. So for example, if I wanted to see how was lifespan covered, or what instructional methods, let's look at this. What instructional methods were used in my entire curriculum, right? You click on it and you get a nice chart on the most frequently used instructional method was maybe integrated clinical experience. And you have 39 mappings for that, followed by case studies and student presentations and team-based learning, which all have 4 mappings. So this gives you a graphical view, but then if you scroll down, it also gives you the details of which courses are covering those attributes. So here you can see that the blue ribbons are the course names, and within that course, what is your measure category? So this is course objectives, and which course objectives actually covers which of the instructional methods. So you get a very detailed view. And imagine if you were writing your self-study narrative about instructional methods and how it's being covered in your curriculum, wouldn't this be a nice view to have this report in front of you? So you can even export it to an Excel. You could even apply filters on it, right? So if you just wanted to view um, it for certain courses, you could select the courses that you want to view the data for, and you could say only show me mapped courses, don't show me the courses that don't have mappings, and so forth. So you could apply the filters that you wanted, you could export it to Excel and further tweak it, change it, modify it. You can do all of that. So this is an example of an attribute report. Similarly, you could also look at the attribute for lifespan, and you could see how each of your lifespan category is being covered across your curriculum. And it would also give you the courses that are covering it, right? Again, very useful report to write your self-study narrative based on that. And you can also drive your curricular enhancements based on that, we are not getting good coverage for the older adults category. We need to introduce older adults as one of the lifespan categories and more courses and give it more time. So maybe include more lecture hours for this topic. So you could get insights from these reports as to how you can drive those curricular enhancements. So these are examples of the different attributes that you have collected, and they could either be at course level or course measure level or event level, depending on the setup that you want or how granular you want to get with these, right? And this is the tags report. So if you think about it, our reports have different formats, and the reason is because we have different roles and different responsibilities in academia. If you are the self-study chair or the director or the curriculum committee chair, you want a lot of bird's eye report, a lot of transactional reports that will allow you to follow up with individuals. And you would also need a report that would say, okay, which of my broader group needs my help with curriculum mapping. So for example, we have here in our tags report, we have needs review. I could easily click on this and see all the mappings that need review, and it will even take me to those mappings. So engage in classroom learning activities is one of the mapping that needs a review. It's been tagged as needs review. So I can click on go to measures, and I could go to that particular objective which says needs review. I could click on edit. I could read it. And if I'm good with it, I could change the tag to confirmed or looks good. These tags are also customizable, the labels, so you can easily make more tags like confirmed or looks good, and then say apply, and then it'll. So I'm going to change it from needs review to confirmed and apply, and the label will change. So the faculty who did this and needed a review, a second opinion, can now rest assured that it's marked as approved or whatever. So that's the beauty of it. If you're working from home asynchronously, you can collaborate on your curriculum mapping activity, especially if it involves multiple individuals contributing to the project. So I'm going to go back to our dashboard. And so those are some overarching reports. Now I'm going to do a click down. So I'm going to go to a particular standard. So each of these tags is a standard, and I'm going to click on CAPT. And now it'll give you all the details about the CAPT standard, all the mapping that is there for this particular standard. And from here, I could either get a click on standard view, or I could click on course view. So we are providing you with two views. You can either view the mapping from one course, or you could view the mapping for a particular standard spanning across multiple courses. So again, depending on the role that you have, if you're a faculty who's responsible for a particular course, you would prefer the course view. If you are an administrator or a self-study or curriculum committee chair and you want to see how are we doing for a particular standard, you would prefer this view. So right now we are in the standard view. On the left-hand side, you will see all the listed standards along with the mappings for them. If I click on any one, the right-hand side of the screen will adapt to give you details for that particular standard. And again, you can expand. So each of these yellow ones are courses and the mappings included in those. You could expand each one of them. On the top, you have a section which describes the standard, and there is a place for narrative. So you could click on the plus icon and you can start writing the narrative here based on all the mapping data that you see here. This view is also customizable. So if I click on customize your view, you're going to see we're giving you options to include as many details as you would like to review. So maybe you just want a high level review. Then I would just say, just show me the list of courses. But if you want the details of each course's mappings, I would click here and say, please include all these details. I want to see that in the report. And all of it would be included. And then it asks you, do you want to apply these settings, this customization to all standards or just the current standard that you are working with? And I could choose either or depending on my need and say save. And what that will do is now you see all the details are being shown on the right hand side. If you are reviewing it and if you realize that, wait, I really need to modify the mapping, you could click on edit mapping and it will take you to that course page where you can go ahead and either add or remove the mappings for that particular course. We also have export to Excel. So based on your customized view, it will ask you whether you want to export the data for the selected standard or for all the standards, including the parent and the child standards. And do you want it in Word format or Excel format? And I'm going to show you both these formats in the next few slides on how it looks. And then you click on export. You can also easily, right, if you are monitoring the progress of mapping and you want to see, by default it's showing you all the standards, but you only want to see unmapped standard because you really want to follow up with those individuals and you want to say, hey, please go ahead and complete the mapping for these. The unmapped standards gives you a nice actionable into, these are the 5 or 6 standards that currently don't have any mapping. So it provides you with an actionable report that again you can export and then follow up with the individuals, right? Now, whatever I just showed you, exactly the similar views you're going to get from a course perspective. So it's a flipped view, and on the left hand side you see all the courses, and when you click on a particular course, it will give you all the standards that this particular course is mapped to, right? So it's a flipped view. And again, all the functionality are similar. So you can customize your view and you can tell how many details do you want to include in your report. You can even go ahead and export it. And you can, from all courses, you can filter to unmapped courses. And now look at all the courses that have no mapping. So think about it. You can follow up with the course directors or course coordinators of these courses and say, hey, I don't see any mapping for these courses. You're responsible for mapping these. Can you please start mapping these courses? So it's a nice actionable that you have, um, that that you can follow up with. So I'll toggle back and you can, yeah, so those are all the things that you can do on these pages. I will quickly go back to my PowerPoint to see that I have covered some of the reporting points that I did want to. So these are your standard based view, and these are your customize your view options that we talked about. You get to decide how much detail you want to include in your report. Once you have exported them either in Word or Excel, this is the Word format and how it's going to show. On the left-hand side, you have a course-based report in Word format. And depending on your selections under Customize the View, you'll see all the mapping details here. On the right-hand side, you have a standard-based view. So for 7A Anatomy, which is a standard, all the courses that have mapping will populate in this report. So this is the Word-based format. And then this is the Excel-based format. So in the Excel-based format, again, you can have a course-based view or a standard-based view. This shows you a course-based view in which each of the rows are your courses and each of the column is your standard. This sample is from RPA standard. And you can see that which course and under each course, which course measure and which objective actually maps to a particular child standard or parent standard, right? So this is an Excel based view. And then similarly, you have a standard based view where the view is flipped. So now your columns are your courses and your rows are your standards. So depending on your need, you can get all these different views out of the system. You can also identify discrepancies, right? So you have, I already showed you how you can filter on the unmapped standards and it will give you unmapped standards and unmapped courses from that, using that filter, so that you can follow up with the individuals responsible to get your mapping process moving forward. Just have 2 minutes left. On this webinar. So last but not the least, you also have some under customize your view. You also have a mapping discrepancy report, which will allow you to select unmapped measures. And that will give you all the measures that do not have any mappings, so that you definitely, for the most part, you don't want to build measures which do not help you meet any standards, right? So for the most of the times, the measures help you meet certain standards. That's why they're part of the course. So you do want to see any measures that are not mapped so that you can map those measures. These are some samples of attributes. We already saw them on the live system. So these are just screenshots of some of those attributes. The last but not the least, this is our progression of learning report, which allows you to showcase how a student is progressing in terms of their learning through the curriculum. So each row is a standard, each column is a course along with the course objective. And this report helps you showcase that as the students move from first course when they enroll to the last course before they graduate, so as they move from left to right, they how are the course components being taught, whether they are knowledge based, skill based, or behavior based content, and at what level. So you expect that as you move scroll from left to right, beginners turn into intermediates and intermediates turn into advanced. So that's what you want to see, and that's what you are able to showcase to your accreditation council if you choose to. We also have a measure linking report, where you can show the link between your lectures to your course objectives, which then in turn map to your standard. So that's the linking report. All right, so I'll quickly tell you how a faculty would access it. If you have access to the faculty module, not to the main module, then depending on what courses you are associated with, so your administrator can tag you to courses where they want you to either manage those courses or map those courses from here, right? And then based on those course associations, so they could go to a course and map you as a faculty to that course. And based on those associations, when you log in, you will see these courses mapping and mapping reports tab. And when you click on them, they work exactly like what we showcased from the administrator side. So for a particular course, you go about clicking on that course from the grid, and then you go about mapping. These screens don't change. So what Chandni showcased to you, how to map, remains the same. The reports also remains the same. You in fact have access to all entire report for the entire curriculum, even if you are not mapped to that particular course. You get access to all the reports because there's nothing proprietary about it. The only thing is you will not be able to edit the mapping for the courses that you are not associated with, but you can view all the mappings. These are some upcoming enhancements that you can look forward to. And with that, I'm just going to pause, take any questions, and then we'll wrap up the webinar. We're already over time. Apologies for that. But if there are any questions that we can answer for you, we're glad to.
Vishak, I see one question here. Where do we find the learning progression report?
Okay, let me quickly show that. I'll hop on to our system and see, when you are in a particular standard, you see this mapping attribute usage. This is where you would go. So get customized Excel report. So you click on that, and then you first select the standards that you want to include in that report. Then you select the courses that you want to include the data for, right? You can even select all courses with one click, save it, and then you want to click on the attributes that you want to include in your report, and that's it. You can even further define whether you only want to see certain data or not, and then click save, and you can generate this report. So that's how you would go about it. So you see the export to Excel sign here, that will generate and download that report for you. Any other questions?
No, that was the only question I saw popped up.
All right. If that is it, thank you so much for all of you who chose to spend this time with us. Please reach out to our curriculum mapping team if you have any specific questions about your curriculum mapping needs. Our team can help you with that. Thank you so much.